Welcome back, Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast. I am Russell Brown, and alongside me, as always, Rhode Island's finest. He's not doing so fine today, a little sick. Brad Kelly, how we doing, brother?
I'm excellent, other than not feeling well. Excited to talk about some big things that we've dropped in the last day.
Yeah, man, last 24 hours have been pretty intense, but magnificent at the same time, because I think a lot of positive content have come out between you and I, and especially on cover1.net. And the best way for you guys to stay up to date with all of that great content is simply by downloading the brand new Cover One app from your App Store, Google Play, and you stay up to date with all of your draft needs, football needs, a ton of great football content from film analysis, Brad's draft guide, which obviously you can go through PayPal and get to, but it's also advertised all over the site. And also you get push notifications. So whenever somebody drops an article, you get it right there on your phone, your tablet, whatever it is. So do it today. Go to Cover One in your App Store, search it, download it, and love it. We got you covered for the rest of it. So Brad, your draft guide, it's dropped. I actually just purchased mine. And it is, dude, it's fantastic. I mean, I love everything that you did as far as, I mean, obviously the reports are going to be, I think, great, but I think the stuff before the reports is even better, where it kind of goes into some of the traits and the way that you evaluate certain traits. And I mean, we're talking stuff as far as sunken hips to create separation, the way they stock block, perception, deception. So, I mean, explain to me a little bit the process of the draft guide and really everything as far as the amount of players you scouted and everything else.
Yeah, so like you said, I included my evaluation scale to the numbers that I use. And additionally, I included picture examples of what to look for when you evaluate those specific traits. So kind of like you said, like it's an example of it's actually Byron Pringle in their game against Texas Tech, and his ability to drop his hips and snap off quickly. And you can tell through the pictures that he's separating away from the defensive back as he's doing it, and why it's important to be able to sink your hips and that type of thing. So that's for every single trait that I look at, and those pictures are there for all of those. And then there's 38 scouting reports. There's an additional 15 players that I saw some of or scouted and didn't have in the top 38. I did have draftable grades on them, but I think that they're priority free agent type of players. And then there's an extra 10 small school players from guys who were in the FBS, who I think will probably be priority free agents and be in NFL training camps, throughout the summer. So in total, it was 63, I think, total players that I have in there, total wide receivers that I have in there. And then included was, rankings for overall rankings for all receivers, rankings for X's, ranking for Z's, rankings for slots, and the bonus article about wide receiver mental processing that I dropped the other day as kind of a preview. That's at the end of the draft guide. So it's kind of the whole thing. I spent a ton of time on it. I keep telling people the amount of time I spent on it was, I always watch Netflix. I kind of have it on the side as I do stuff, just as some background noise. And I watched the entire series of Friends and Better Call Saul.
Oh my God.
That's how much time and then some too, even when I listen to podcasts as I work. So I spend a lot of time on it. I try to make it very extensive and very unique, and I'm really happy with the way it came out.
Yeah, well, at least you were watching good shows on Netflix. I mean, I'll give you credit there. Friends is a classic, and Better Call Saul is, fantastic too. I do want to ask you a question, though, as far as the physical profile scale. And guys, you can get this draft guide at Brad Kelly 17 on Twitter. You can find it on PayPal right there. It's pinned on his profile, and all you got to do, pay the $10. It's paid right away, and then the email is sent. I would say probably within 24 hours at the most.
Yeah, I've been checking it every 20 minutes, so it won't even be very long. You'll get it essentially right away if you order it.
Yeah, so if you order it, it's coming in right away. Probably no longer than an hour. I would say the safest bet is 24 hours. But again, it's coming in right away. This physical profile scale, though, is interesting to me. And I love that, for a receiver that's 5'8", 173, it's 1 point. What if they're, 5'9", 190? How does that how does that shape up? How can you explain, like, as far as the physical profile, because you got arm length in there as well. So like if a receiver's got 32-inch arms and hand size of 9 3/8, they get 3 points. What if they're at 32-inch arms and 9 3/4 hand size?
So the way the physical profile scale works, and it's included in there, it's very detailed. But essentially, there's 4 major factors that go into a receiver's like body type, height, weight, arm length, and hand size. That's my opinion, and they're weighted a little bit differently. So physical profile is 10 points out of my entire scale, and you go up to 50 points total, and then you divide by 5. But in it, basically, obviously a player who is 6'5", 230 is going to have a little bit more margin for error. The quarterback is going to be allowed more margin for error than a guy who is 5'8", 180, because his catch radius, they got bigger guys' catch radius is so much bigger. So it is an important factor. I don't think it's like the most important factor. I'd rather have guys you can separate, but it's definitely a factor that you have to consider. So basically, if you have, the height, the weight, the long arms, and the hand size, the big hands to be safer when you catch the ball and when you grip the ball as you're running with it, you're going to have a higher score. And the numbers aren't just arbitrary numbers that I made up. They're actually based off of Mock Draftable's percentiles. So if you're in the 90th percentile or higher in height, weight, arm length, and hand size for wide receivers, you will have the perfect physical profile. No receiver got that this year. I think the highest one was Jake Wienecke out of South Dakota State. He's like 6'4". He's over 6'4", so he's over the 90th percentile. He's over 222 pounds, so he's over the 90th percentile. And then I think he had the arm length, but he was just missing the hand size. So, but he was very close to having what I would say is the best physical profile that you could have.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And there's a great example in there as well. So it's really just touching base. And as far as height, weight, and everything else, first player that came to mind was Cortland Sutton, because he's obviously being discussed as a first-round guy. And his height is, and I'll just give a little preview for everybody, height at 6'3" 3/8", 87th percentile. Weight, 218, 86th percentile. Wingspan, 79 1/4, 88th percentile. And then it's got, combine notes for the 40, the vert, date of birth. So guys, you have to check this out. He's got Cortland Sutton with a, I'm not going to say the grade, but that's, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily agree, but I don't disagree. I'm not that impressed with Cortland Sutton. We've discussed him before. So no, you guys definitely check this out. Who do you think in this group of receivers is maybe the biggest sleeper out of everybody that you graded?
I think it's Trey Quinn, Cortland Sutton's teammate, also out of SMU. I think that he is a player that not that many people watch. If you go on YouTube and look up for one of his cut-ups, they don't exist. There are 0 of them. So I think that some people who are kind of like the online evaluators don't necessarily look for guys who don't have like the mass amount of cut-ups or whatnot. But if you watch their full games and you look into Trey Quinn's background, he is a good football player. He's a phenomenal route runner. I watched all the full games just so I could watch him. And that's also when I watched Sutton. And Quinn impressed me more than Sutton in all 5 games that I watched of him. He didn't drop a pass the entire time. He was very productive in all of them. He was an immediate separator at the line of scrimmage. He had, better route running skills, smoother breaks. So he's a guy who, he's a little bit undersized at 5'11" 3/8", but he weighs over 200 pounds. He's pretty well built, and he has big, soft hands, and he's a plus athlete. He's an above average athlete, 67th percentile according to relativeathleticscores.com. And, he's a great route runner, and he has safe hands. So I think that he's a top 10 receiver in the class who is not getting even top 20 buzz. But I think he's the number one sleeper for receivers in the class. And
we've talked about him before too, when we discussed Cortland Sutton, because we've done a handful of episodes together, and we've done, not a lot on receivers, but we've talked a little bit about receivers. And Trey Quinn was a player that you talked about highly. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you compared him to Cooper Kupp, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. And you don't have pro comps on here, which is, I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't like pro comps that much. I like keeping players, keeping them who they are. Let them be who they are. Let Trey Quinn be Trey Quinn. Let, Steve Ishmael be Steve Ishmael, which I see he's in here. Nice job, brother. And by the way, I'm pretty big on Steve Ishmael. Not like, first or second day, but I think day 3 you could get a quality player. And then I don't know. You got some stuff as far as like Cam Phillips and Steven Mitchell. What's some of this stuff as far as the preview on these guys?
Right. So I had 38 draftable grades. Going past that, I looked at some players who maybe could get drafted, but I just didn't have draftable grades on, but who I think will eventually be priority free agents. Guys like Cam Phillips, who could get drafted in the 7th round, but he graded out just missing a 7th round grade for me. Stephen Dunbar, Robert Foster, Quadre Henderson, kind of got Ray McLeod out of Clemson. Guys like that, who I think that are possible late round picks, they could get drafted, but I think for me they're more of undrafted free agent type of players. But I wanted to include them because the possibility that they do get drafted and their college playing days were pretty successful. Especially look at a guy like Cam Phillips. I think he had over 3,000 yards in his career, and some of these guys were very good athletes as well. If you look at Andre Lavrone from Virginia, he's like 6'3", 220 pounds, and he had good numbers at their pro day. He's probably going to get drafted, but I just didn't see it. I think he's more of an undrafted free agent, maybe 6th round in the NFL. But I definitely wanted to include as many additional guys past the 38 scouting reports as I could.
Yeah, no doubt. And you've got DJ Shark there at number 10, which I like seeing because I believe I've got him right around the same range, maybe a spot or two higher. But, I've seen a lot of discussion of him as being like a, late 1, early 2, middle 2nd round pick. And what were your evaluations on him?
I get that when it comes to DJ Chark, and I think that he's a high quality person. His background story is pretty incredible. And additionally, he has like superhero athleticism, and you add that into the fact that he's 6'3", 200 pounds, and you're going to get a guy who's going to get drafted high because his potential is high. He's a high character individual. And I understand that, but I think just on film, when it comes to his projection, he's a few years away as a receiver. He's a little bit, he needs refinement on breaks. He needs refinement on, running routes at all levels of the field. His ball skills leave a ton to be desired, especially downfield. He's more of an over the shoulder type of catcher. Doesn't necessarily attack the catch point, which in the NFL, when he's not able to separate as much against NFL cornerbacks, he's going to have to attack the catch point more. So I think that he's definitely a work in progress. I have a round grade on him of 2, late 2nd, early 3rd. When it came down to it, I said I would take him in the 3rd. But I think that he might sneak into the end of the 1st round because he's so big, athletic, and a high character person. But I think that when you take him, you have to realize that he's not going to be a year 1 come in and produce right away type of player.
Mm-mm. No, I'm the same way. I've got him 86th overall on my board, which we'll get into my board here momentarily, which isn't terrible. I don't know how many receivers I have in front of him. I'd have to take a second here and count it, but I'm not going to. But 86, that's still 3rd round, maybe a little bit late for most of you, but it is what it is. I liked what I saw from him. I liked, as far as the length, the athletic ability is certainly there. And again, you talked athletic ability. So I don't know. I like him, but I don't know. I thought as far as other receivers, I thought there were others that were better, including Cortland Sutton. So my biggest thing was with Cortland Sutton. He cannot create separation to save his life.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Sutton is a little bit inefficient at the break point, and I think that's why he's not as good of a separator as a guy like Trey Quinn. And when you go back and watch the film, Quinn was the guy that they were looking at on 3rd down, like all the time. Like they were never throwing to Sutton on 3rd down, not as much as Quinn at least. Mm-hmm. And that separation is part of it. But in the NFL, that's going to happen. There's going to be times when on 3rd down, they're not going to go to their big talented receiver on the outside. They'd rather go to a guy who can separate, for sure and immediately. And that's going to be Trey Quinn. And he's going to be a stick mover at the next level, in my opinion.
Right. I would agree with that. As far as the receivers, how many have 1st round grades out of this?
Just one. Just one. It's Dante Pettis. I have 2 guys who have late 1st, early 2nd round grades, and that's Anthony Miller and DJ Moore. And then Calvin Ridley was the only lone 2nd round grade. When it came down to everything, I think I would I'd consider taking Calvin Ridley in the late 1st, early 2nd. But I think that Pettis is, we've talked about it ad nauseum. Mm-hmm. That Pettis is my wide receiver 1, but I think Miller and Moore are right there. And Miller and Moore were so close when it came to the grades, and I have flip-flopped back and forth between them the entire pre-draft process, essentially. Like they're they're right next to each other. I ended up saying I would take DJ Moore first because he's a little bit younger and he doesn't have the injury history that Miller is coming off of. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that those two guys I would take late first and not really, I wouldn't question it. I wouldn't look back. I think those guys are top 30 players.
Yeah, no, I like DJ Moore a lot. He's in the top 30 for me. And Anthony Miller, if I'm not mistaken, he's a top 50 player on my board. And you talk injuries with Anthony Miller. Yeah, he's sitting there right at 49. Nice. But the big thing with him is it's lower body injuries. So it's like, can you really can you bounce back from that consistently enough? Because I feel like once a player, especially receivers, once they get a lower body injury and, an ankle, a knee, Achilles or something, it's consistently, coming back up and flaring back up for them. And that's one thing that worries me with him, but I still would take him in the second round. And through my evaluation on these receivers, and I did not do as well of a job with receivers as you did, which is why you guys definitely need to purchase this draft guide because it's out of this world as I continue to scroll through it and picking stuff up as we go. But I think there's a lot of day two receivers in this draft. And I mean, just judging by your board, you've got essentially 14 guys that could be going on day two of the draft.
Yeah, there's a ton of guys who are day two or even very early day three receivers.
Mm-hmm.
I think my grading scale, my receivers that are ranked by grade and my receivers that are ranked by feel and pretty much I would say more of my official rankings has a little bit less. They're a little bit not as generous, I would say. But there are 14 players that I have in the first 3 rounds, and 13 of them would be day two. I guess if you count Pettis, Moore, Ridley, and Miller as first round picks, and it's a little bit less. It's like 11 guys on day two, but
yeah.
I think that is kind of the sweet spot for receivers in this draft. And there's a lot of different types of receivers that you can get on day two. Even looking at guys like Deshaun Hamilton or Christian Kirk, or Cortland Sutton or whoever it may be, ESB out of Notre Dame. There's just so many different types of receivers on day two who have the talent and who have the ability and project as nice pieces, complementary receivers at the next level. Day two was kind of, I think, the sweet spot, and there's so much variance that teams are going to get their guy and teams are going to get the player who fits into their system and their needs.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is great stuff, man. I mean, seriously, this is insane. Now, realistically speaking, we know 32 teams picking in first round. How many receivers go in the first round, you think?
I'm going to say 3. The way it's looking now, I'll probably say 3. I think that St. Brown actually ends up falling out of the first round despite, and Chark, they both end up going in round 2 despite some rumors that they might go round 1. I think it's going to be DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, and Cortland Sutton taken in the first round. Now the Cowboys are definitely in the market for a receiver. We know some teams, in that 10 to 20 range are also in there. And then you think about like a team like the Panthers. They're in the market for a receiver. So I think that it ends up being 3, and I think that Moore, Ridley, and Sutton are the 3 that are taken.
Yeah, and the common thing with Cortland Sutton is simply him going in the first round now because Des Bryant got cut by the Cowboys. So, I mean, it certainly makes a lot of sense. I know they worked him out a ton at his pro day and stuff like that, and they've paid really close attention to Cortland Sutton. But I mean, I would not be surprised if DJ Moore actually was the pick at 19. But I would agree, Ridley, Moore, Sutton probably will be the guys that go in the first round. Especially from everything that it sounds like. Do you think a player like I've seen Christian Kirk talked about as a first round guy? Do you think Christian Kirk goes in the first round? I don't think so.
No, I don't think Kirk goes in the first round. I think the slot receiver is a little bit devalued for NFL teams, despite the fact that I think it's a little bit more important than some people want to say it is, because nowadays in the offenses that NFL teams are running, and obviously I always go back to the Patriots, but it's such a valuable piece for teams who want to run the spread and who want to get the ball out quickly. And today's game with edge rushers getting better and better and quarterbacks having less and less time, the immediate separators are becoming more valuable at the receiver position. And I think that, I would take, I wouldn't say that would be totally against a team taking Kirk in the first round. I think NFL teams don't value that position as highly as outside evaluators do. So I think Kirk is more of a day 2 pick, despite maybe some buzz that he might go late round 1.
Yeah, no, I think he's a day 2 pick. I whenever I watch him, and I know I spoke earlier, I don't like pro comps, but whenever I watch him, I really think of Golden Tate every single time. Kind of a strong slot receiver. I don't know how he will line up on the outside. I don't think he's got the true burner speed to burn anybody on the outside. I'm sure he'll do it a handful of times here or there, but realistically, I think you line him up in the slot and let him do his work in short intermediate routes. And I think, he might have a little, special shiftiness in the red zone, similar to Golden Tate. So, I mean, I still would value him in, middle to late round 2, maybe early round 3. And, I've grown to like him a lot more as I've gotten, closer to the end of the process than where I was at the beginning of the process back in, September, October. So I don't know. I've definitely grown to like him. But again, you guys need to check out this draft guide. You go to Brad's Twitter page at BradKelly17. It's pinned right there at the top of the page. And then you just click the link, you send them $10, and then you get the draft guide in your email within 20 minutes. And dude, this is great. I mean, you got pictures in here. It's, explanation of the grading scale, examples of traits, scouting reports, the best of the rest. You've got small school guys, the rankings of your receivers, the positional rankings, and then you've got the bonus article there. So this is, you guys definitely check it out today at BradKelly17. Definitely worth it. So let's shift gears and let's get to my big board, which I dropped the other day. 160 players. 100 of them are fully graded, and the highest graded player is Quentin Nelson. I was a little shocked by it. He beat out Saquon Barkley by 2.5 points, and I think a lot of it with Nelson is just safest pick in the draft and his athletic ability, despite a player of his size. And he's got elite length for the position, especially as a guard. Athletic ability is elite, and he's a sound technician. I mean, there's not too many flaws with his game, where Barkley, some of the flaws with his game was the vision as far as getting to the line of scrimmage, hesitant at times, but the change of direction with Barkley, the ability to create that burst are two things that I, really like with him as a running back. And I definitely think he's a top 5 player in the class. And I still think he's a top 5 pick in this class. I was a little shocked that I had Darius Geis in the top 10 of my draft grades, but he's phenomenal. I mean, he's a really talented back. The aggressiveness, he's got a nice little burst to him. Not, I don't think it's an elite burst, but the biggest thing with him is just the vision. I think his vision is far superior than any running backs in this class. And I love that he can get outside, and then just that cut inside is just so deadly, and he can cut like a knife. So he's very talented. Did you check out the big board?
I did, and I think the two things that stick out are players that come back to back in the top 10, and that's Connor Williams at number 6 and Maurice Hurst at number 7. Can you touch on why you're so high on Williams, despite him not being as good as Mike McGlinchey?
Well, look, I get it with McGlinchey as far as people really like him as the most pure offensive tackle in this class. Connor Williams being often translated as a guard. I like Williams. I think he came out, and I believe he tested at like 298 pounds at the combine. I think he simply did that just to prove his athletic ability. I have no issue with him if he was to jump into training camp and be 310. I think he's going to get stronger. I think he's exactly at the speed that he needs to be at. And I think one of the biggest things with Connor Williams is there's times that his kick step is not where it needs to be, but I think a lot of it is just dealing with the injuries and getting everything kind of gelled, if you will, as an offensive tackle. I think there's times that he lunges a little bit, but I like his hands. I like the aggressiveness. You can't sleep on that. And I still like his athletic ability. And Mike McGlinchey, very athletic for a player his size. He's almost like 6'8", 6'9". And the biggest thing with McGlinchey is, again, his kick step. He's got good angles with that. He operates well in space, but I just think he looks more natural as a right tackle than a left tackle. And that's not saying, he can't be, 6 overall, but I think Connor Williams, has a shot to play left tackle if I'm doing the board, and if I'm coaching him, I'm playing him at left tackle. And Mo Hurst, you guys know I love Mo Hurst. It's been that way the entire time. I know there's not really a whole lot from the combine and the pro day, and the pro day numbers were not off the charts, but he's disruptive. His technique is very good. He plays below pad level for the most part. I mean, there's going to be reps where guys aren't perfect. But again, that disruptiveness in the backfield, I like the burst that he brings. I think he does a really good job with just, lateral quickness, lateral agility, and able to pursue and burst. So again, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just I fell in love with, these players and I want to place them there. Maybe that's part of it. But I thought the grades were exactly where they needed to be. So I like Connor Williams. I like Mo Hurst a lot.
Can you speak on Auden Tate being so high? Because, obviously some people are turned off by the athletic testing, going so poorly. And I still have Auden Tate with a 4th round grade on my board. So I'm not completely writing him off either. But having him at number 45, can you talk about?
Yeah, well, I mean, when he tested so poorly, and everybody was like, oh, well, that's it, moving him down. And I'm like, and I tweeted it out. I said, you know what? I'm going to leave him where he needs to be. And he was much higher on my board than this. He was a top 30 player. So he dropped 15 spots just simply off the athletic testing. But I think, while he's not the most pure route runner and, he's not the player that Dante Pettis is or anything like that, but they're obviously two different types of players, and
you have him higher than Dante Pettis.
I understand that, and that's fine. I don't covet a player like Dante Pettis like you do. I covet a player like Auden Tate, who I think has really good body control, has nice size, he can play on the outside, and while he doesn't have elite athletic ability, I trust his hands, and I trust that he's 21 years of age. He's just forming into the receiver that he needs to be, despite some of the flaws athletically. So I think he'll be just fine. He's going to be a red zone magnet. I'm putting him on the outside. I'll let him get me, 60, 70 balls a year, 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns. We'll be good, man. We'll be good. Maybe. I'll probably be crazy on it. Whatever. It is what it is.
Final question is, why do you hate Dante Pettis?
I don't hate Dante Pettis. I don't hate him. I don't see him as, the player that you do. I mean, you definitely took more time as far as the in-depth route running ability and everything else. And I think he's a good route runner. I think he's crazy shifty in the open field. And I think he can line up on the outside, but how's he going to do against Richard Sherman on the outside? I think Auden Tate could handle himself against Richard Sherman on the outside simply because of the size. I think just the mismatch on the size is a bit of a concern. And Dante Pettis, wasn't he dinged up too, right? Yeah,
he's a foot injury.
Exactly. So that concerns me, man. I mean, where's he at on the board? Let me find him.
78.
That's not bad. I mean, it's not terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible.
Yeah, it's too low.
It probably is for you, yeah.
All right, so talk about the tight end rankings.
Yeah, no, tight ends. You know it, Ian Thomas. That's my boy. He's staying at number 1 as a tight end. He's sitting there at 53. I think Ian Thomas is a guy that, everybody's been kind of jumping on, not so much the bandwagon, because I don't know if there really is a bandwagon. I think it's just me, pretty much. But there's a lot of talk of him having the highest value of any tight end in this class. And while he's not the most pure route runner, but he's thick. He's a good run blocker. He's even if he's in pass blocking situations, which they do, he's a good pass blocker. He ran a lot of the split zone, and I thought he did it efficiently, coming downhill and sticking his block. And I just like him as far as, he's going to get better, I think, as a pass catcher. You can trust him in the open field. He's still, a little raw, but again, the upside is there. And I try not to put upside on every single player or value. And clearly I did that with guys like Ian Thomas, Justin Jones, Auden Tate. There's a handful of guys. And maybe I need to go back and revisit the grading scale. Maybe I'm missing something as far as a certain trait, or maybe I have, the wrong traits in there as far as grading them. But I still like Ian Thomas as the top tight end in this class. I think as for a player of his size, I thought the athletic ability was pretty good. And then behind him is Dallas Goedert out of South Dakota State, who I like a lot. as far as his athletic ability goes, and he was actually a pretty good run blocker as well. So I thought it surprised me a little bit when I started diving more into his tape. And so he's sitting there at 59. And then Mark Andrews at 63. I think just all around, he's not the most, not the highest graded player at a specific skill set compared to other players. But I think just all around, I think he can be one of the more complete tight ends out of this class. So him at 63. Where are we going here next? I'm pretty sure it's Gesicki at 79, which I know people are going to be like, hey, man, this guy's Jimmy Graham. I love the athletic ability. It's elite. And maybe this is just me trusting the tape rather than more so the combine and the elite testing that a lot of these guys had. And that's something that I'm trying to stay true to this year, where, yes, some guys might not have the greatest testing, or some guys had really good testing. I'm going to try and stick to the tape and say, okay, I like this kid's tape. I trust the film. I'm going to go with that. And Gesicki, while he is a good pass catcher, he can get up and pluck balls out of the sky. Overall, I don't think he can block worth all hell. And that's a big problem for me, because I know, the NFL apparently is a 70% passing league, which is not true, because the highest team had 61% passing this past year, and that was it. And I'm pretty sure it was New Orleans. So realistically speaking, you're still going to have to block for about 40% of the game, and Gesicki can't do it. So I don't think he does it well enough, at least compared to the guys listed above him. I don't think he's a better blocker than. So that bothers me a little bit, but still 79 I think is just fine. So maybe I have the wrong guys placed, but we'll see.
As far as the tight ends go, and I like this tight end class, the guys, the four you just mentioned, though, and Hayden Hurst, Durham Smythe, even later on in the draft, if he's healthy, maybe Chris Herndon out of Miami. How do they're pretty low, I would say, as far as the overall board goes for you. You don't have a tight end in the top 50. So how do you think this tight end class compares to last year's class? And last year might be an outlier because of how really stacked the tight end class was. But how do you think this class and last year's class compare at the tight end position?
I think this class is more so, you're looking at it from the outside looking in. You're looking at it and saying, you know what, these guys are players that they what they are is maybe what is all they're going to be, or maybe these guys have value that's through the roof, where the guys that you got last year, what they were at that time was already better than what these guys are in this class right now. So, I mean, clearly those guys last year were that much better. And I like this group of tight ends, as far as I think Ian Thomas, pretty well-rounded. I think Mark Andrews is pretty well-rounded. Dallas Goedert's pretty well-rounded. But then, you jump into players like Gesicki and some of these other guys. Durham Smythe, not his fault that he wasn't used much as a pass catcher, but I've got to go off of the tape, and it's, you don't have that many opportunities to go out and catch the football. So I like him as far as a blocker goes, but there was times in 2016 where he was setting up to block and he was missing blocks. And I have it on my Twitter to prove it. I mean, there was times against Texas that he was just whiffing on blocks. So I think there's a lot of missed opportunities with this tight end class where they could have been really, really good in certain spots through 2016 and 2017, where the guys from the 2017 NFL draft, from 2016, 2015, they were much more complete, and they capitalized on almost every single opportunity that they were given. So do I like this tight end class? Yes. Do I like it enough to say there's a round one tight end? No. Do I think there's a tight end that could probably go in the beginning half of the second round? Absolutely. Will it be Ian Thomas? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's Gesicki because of his athletic ability, or maybe it is Mark Andrews, or maybe it is Dallas Goedert. But, realistically speaking, I think these guys, I don't think Gesicki, the only thing he did was separate himself athletically. There's not really anything else that he can't do, that he does that any of these other guys can't do.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to this tight end class, in my opinion of them, is I like it, and I like the depth of it. And, I'm a big fan of Durham Smythe and how he's well-rounded, and he's, a little bit later. But I think that these guys are a little bit more, they offer one or two elite things, whereas last year's class, like O.J. Howard, he offered pretty much everything you could want from a tight end. But a guy like Gesicki, he can win above the rim. He's a freak athlete, and additionally, he showed he has great ball skills. A guy like Mark Andrews is incredible after the catch for his size. I mean, he's one of the most elusive, 250 pounders I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy like Ian Thomas, he's a freak athlete as well. He plays with great leverage. A guy like Goddard is a little bit more well-rounded, can catch the ball, can block. And then, Hayden Hurst is another guy who's a pretty smooth athlete for his size who can catch the ball. So I think it's a little bit more niche players as far as this tight end class goes, but I think I still like a lot of them, and I'd be fine with taking a lot of them, in round 2.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know if any of them will end up with a round 1 grade.
Well, and I know Hayden Hurst keeps getting, in the discussion of being round 1, and I don't know. I don't see it with him. I mean, I'm not going to knock a guy for being 24, especially when it's a tight end, because I feel like at 24, okay, if I draft you in the second round and I get you to be my tight end till you're 32, all right, that's a win-win for me. I think athletically, he's pretty gifted there, obviously. I think as a pass catcher, he's okay. I thought as a run blocker, though, there was times that he missed keys too high, hands not inside. There was just those little things, those little coaching points. And I think the big thing, too, with my board is not every single player. Like some players I watched 6 times, 6 different games. Some players I watched 8 games. Some players I only watched 4 games. So, while this is still, I think, very much of a raw board, and this is the first time I've ever given out like an overall grade to a player. Last year, I just put a board together and placed players to kind of where I liked them and thought this is where they would go. This year, it was simply run through the numbers and place them. And, obviously, I think I've got to tweak some things moving forward in the future, but I still like, obviously, I know I put in a ton of work. I like most of the players where they are. One player I think is a little bit low on my board is in Wuso from USC. I think I'm a little low on him. He's at 72 overall, but I don't know. I've really grown to like him. I think a lot of it's Eric's fault because of the threads that he's been putting out there. And I only watched 4 games of him, but he was still, I thought, very good, still a little bit raw at certain spots in those specific games. So realistically, again, it fluctuates all over the board because I didn't watch, I think a lot of guys that put boards together, they watch the consistent, 5, 6, 7 games on a player consistently, where mine was a little bit up and down on certain guys. So I think that's probably my biggest thing that I need to do for next year is watch the same amount of tape on each and every single player. That way, when it kind of comes to the negatives and the positives, they're all kind of equal. Because some players, I'd only have, 4 or 5 negative points on them and then, 4 or 5 positives or whatever the case may be, So like Quentin Nelson, obviously he's just a freak. So I'm more so talking about players that are down in, the 70 range, the 80 range. But again, it's 100 players graded. Then there's the rest of the pack, 100 in 1 to 160. And these are just guys that I placed on the board. And these were players that I simply, watched, but I didn't watch enough to give a grade on. Mike McCray, I like a lot. And I feel like he could be a 4th round pick, maybe a 5th round pick just off of feel for the draft and stuff like that. So I don't know. Check it out at cover1.net. It's one of the first things you'll see. It's on my Twitter page at Russ NFL Draft. And you can bash me for having players all over. Let's jump into quarterback rankings, though. And before we get into that, I do need to let you guys know Cover One, the NFL Draft podcast, is brought to you by First Down Playbook. First Down Playbook is the #1 playbook resource for football coaches with over 30,000 plays. First Down Playbook is a database of youth, high school, and flag football plays, color-coded with coaching points for every position on every play. Check it out today at firstdownplaybook.com. That's First Down Playbook, one place, all the football. So we talked about your draft guide, my big board, and we kind of want to start going through the positional rankings that we have for our positional groups. And we want to start obviously at the top with the quarterbacks and the running backs. So let's start with the quarterbacks. Obviously, everybody wants to know about where these guys are ranked, and I think we've kind of gone over it enough with every team and their draft options and not every specific player, but we've gone through pretty much almost every group. So we're a week away from the draft. Where's the quarterbacks ranking on your board?
So my quarterback 1 is Sam Darnold. I've had that consistent for a long time now. He's the person I anticipated I would like the most at the end of last season, and it's continued throughout the season and throughout the pre-draft process. And then number 2, I have Josh Rosen, Baker Mayfield at number 3, Lamar Jackson at number 4. Pretty much after that, it's like wide open. I'm not a fan of Josh Allen, but I'm also not a fan of Mason Rudolph. I am a little bit higher on some guys later on. We're talking day 3, early day 3, a guy like Kyle Lauletta. Later day 3, maybe Logan Woodside. But I think that the top 4 is really who should be the main focus, because I think there's a big drop-off after those 4, and that's Darnold, Rosen, Mayfield, and Lamar. But I'd like all 4 of them. All 4 of them should be top 12 players on my overall board. So I'm a fan of all the quarterbacks, of those 4 quarterbacks, and there's not that much separating them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Darnold, I think, is going to be the first pick of the draft anyways. Do I think he's the best quarterback in this class? No, I don't. I think Josh Rosen is the best quarterback. I think he's the most pro-ready guy. I think some of the pre-snap read stuff that he does, the way he even processes after the snap is some of the best we've seen, I think, in at least a couple of years. And he's magnificent when the ball's in his hands. I mean, he's not, he doesn't have the most elite arm strength, and he's not the most accurate player on the football field. That would go to Baker Mayfield, but he is still, I think, a very talented player. He can hit many of the big time throws. One of the biggest things is he's got to stop creating pressure for himself. There's times that he just panics. Whether he's facing a 4-man rush, a 5-man rush. And I feel like a lot of the times he's seeing that pre-snap, blitz or something that could be, coming his way, and then he just panics. And I think that's something that he's got to take time and learn how to handle. So it's interesting to where Josh Rosen will go, because there's this discussion of potentially him going from, maybe the 2nd overall pick all the way down to maybe the 12th overall pick. There's a chance that he slides, apparently, because a lot of teams are hesitant of the personality where he's just being honest and being true and being, who he is. But again, I don't know. I don't really buy into all that. I just think he's one of the more talented, passers in this class, the most, complete quarterback in this class. So I got him at 1, Baker Mayfield at 2, Sam Darnold 3, Lamar's 4, Josh Allen's 5, and Mason Rudolph 6. Because it's like you said, it's wide open after Lamar Jackson, in my opinion. I'm not the biggest fan of Josh Allen, but there's things that he does that I like. I mean, I think, obviously size, he's got elite size. He's got really nice athletic ability. He tested up, 4.75 in the 40. So, I mean, that's clear. I think he does a nice job extending plays outside of the pocket, but he stares down receivers. He's so sporadic with the ball in his hands, which we know. And I mean, the big thing with him is, what Josh Allen are you going to get on Sundays? Are you going to get the guy that can't hit the side of a barn, or are you going to get the guy that can drop it into a bucket 80 yards downfield? So that's the biggest thing with him. Did you watch anything else as far as like Kyle Lauletta or Luke Falk? I watched a little of Luke Falk and I watched a little of Kyle Lauletta, but I didn't watch enough of these guys to say, oh, Mike White's the 7th best QB. Yeah,
I saw some of those guys that you just mentioned at the Senior Bowl, but I have not done film breakdowns on Mike White or Luke Falk. Mm-hmm. I probably won't get to them if we're going to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, but I have watched I watched Logan Woodside, and I was a pretty big fan of him. You go back to look at his 2016 film; it's pretty impressive. He gets the ball out quick; it's pretty accurate. I think he's a better version of Luke Falk, at least from what I saw down in Mobile. And I wouldn't mind him being taken a little bit, on day 3 of the draft by a team like the Patriots, looking for maybe like a developmental guy.
Michigan State fun fact of the day, because I will not say Michigan fun fact of the day, because I feel like if I say Michigan, people instantly think of the university, and I want no part of that. I want just to be clear of that. Michigan State fun fact of the day, or state of Michigan fun fact of the day. How about that? And Logan Woodside's dad is like best friends with my high school defensive line coach. Pretty crazy. So very weird. And last year, actually, my old defensive line coach found me on Facebook, hit me up and said, hey, saw you're doing a bunch of draft stuff. Great stuff. Keep it up. But want to let you know about this kid, Logan Woodside. And I said, yeah, I'll keep an eye out. And it's always been in the back of my mind, but I never really got the chance to take a full grasp of him. So I think he's going to be an interesting name. I hope he gets drafted, just because that's always cool to see stuff like that. Interesting question, though. I've heard a lot as far as Luke Falk being potentially Luke Falk being potentially a a day 2 pick in the second round somewhere. Is this like the Davis Webb season again? Is this what this is, or is this just, smoke?
It's probably the Tom Savage smoke pass. Can like sneak up to day 2 or round 2, but really go like round 5 or Savage win. I don't see it with Falk. I really don't.
He's got a nice release.
Yeah, sure. He's got a noodle arm. He's one of those guys. Candy cane arm. I don't think he anticipates very well. I don't necessarily think his placement is very good either. And for a guy who passed for so many yards that he did in college, I was kind of expecting his ball placement to be a little bit more consistent, but I don't even see that. I definitely think that I think the notion that air raid or spread offense QBs can't translate to the NFL is wrong. I don't agree with that at all. I think we've seen it enough now to dispel that myth. However, in some cases, I think that you have to take it into account on a case-by-case basis. And Luke Falk, I think, falls under that. He was kind of a product of his system and the Mike Leach offense.
Yeah, I mean, he had some concussions in college, and nobody's talking about those, but Josh Rosen got one, and everybody's freaking out about it, so that's interesting. Anyways, let's move forward to running backs. Let's go through these rankings. I'll start, I guess. I'm sitting there with Saquon Barkley at 1, Darius Geis is 2, Sonny Michel is 3, Nick Chubb is 4, and Ronald Jones is 5. I do like Rashad Penny a lot. I think Rashad Penny is going to be a really nice day 2 pick. And if the rumors are true that the New York Giants are going to take Saquon Barkley at 2, that's unfortunate because I think he would have been a really nice find for them potentially in the 3rd round if he was there. But I don't know. I mean, they do have 2 third-round picks now, and it sounds like they might go Barkley with the first pick that they have. And so I don't know. I like Ronald Jones a lot, though, too. I like a lot of the stuff as far as, the zone running scheme that they have out there at USC. I think that's a good fit for him. They ran a lot of RPOs out there, so he's able to I think that will translate well for him because he'll get the understanding of how it all works, where some programs, they just, they don't run it. And if they do, they run it very poorly. Nick Chubb, I like him a lot. There's some question marks as far as he a complete back. Can he be a 3-down back? I think he can be, but I don't think he'll be there yet, but maybe. Sonny Michel, that burst is insane. He can change direction. He can catch passes out of the backfield. He can pick up blitzes. He's great. I think he could be a first-round player. Darius Geis, top 10 player in the class, and Saquon Barkley, a top 5 player in the class. So I like these guys a lot.
I'm a big fan of the running back class as well. I have Saquon Barkley as my top running back, top 5 player, top he's the number 2 player on my board. Huge fan of him. I've been a fan of him since he was a freshman at Penn State. Darius Geis is my second running back, also a top 10 player for me. And then I differ a little bit from you. I'm a huge fan of Ronald Jones. I love his youth. I love his acceleration. He's able to put his foot in the ground and get vertical and burst through the hole. And he showed that so often at USC. And despite not being heavily targeted in the pass game, I think he showed it enough, and the traits were there that he can be a talented 3-down running back in the NFL. He actually met with the New England Patriots recently. I would be ecstatic if they got him at 31. I was not expecting running back to be a need, but he would be such a dynamic piece for them that I would be a fan of that pick at pick 31. Then going past him, I have Sonny Michel at 4 and then Nick Chubb at 5. When you go down and you talk about guys, a little bit later, day 3 type of players, I still like Akon Wadley. I still like Ito Smith. Not saying that they're like number 6 and 7, but talking day 3 type of backs. I like both of them, and to be a third down like James White, Dion Lewis type of role for an NFL team.
Yeah, Ito Smith is 74th on my board, so you guys can suck on that. Yeah, no, I like Ito Smith a lot. I'm much higher on him. And guys, again, when you check out my big board and you see some of these guys, and you bring up Ito Smith, so I'm bringing back up the big board. When you see these guys, I'm not doing this stuff for clicks. I mean, I really am just doing this off of film. And I saw Ito Smith in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, and that's when I became a fan, because I saw some of the change of direction. It's not elite, but he's quick. He's elusive. He moves. He's got a nice little wiggle in the open field, and he can catch passes out of the backfield. That's a big plus in this offensive today for the NFL. So I think he could potentially sneak into the end of day 2 It would not surprise me. I do like John Kelly a lot out of Tennessee too. I don't think he'll come in and have a Alvin Kamara type of impact. That's often been, the thing that's discussed. I think a lot of it's because they both played at Tennessee. I don't think he'll come in and be Kamara, but I think maybe in 2 years he can be very, very good. Again, I talked about Rashad Penny. I do like him. I do have Kerryon Johnson on my board as far as the top 100 goes. He's at 80, but I'm not the biggest fan of him. I do like Royce Freeman. And my big thing with Kerryon Johnson, which I'll talk about with Zach Blackersby on Friday, on ESPN 106.7, I think it is, down there in Auburn. I like him, but I think the biggest thing was people talked about him as if he was the next Le'Veon Bell, and that was like bothering me. And when I watched the film, I guess I had that expectation, and like not Le'Veon Bell today, like Le'Veon Bell at Michigan State, and even then it wasn't even the same. And I'm like, okay, he's not as patient as him. I think he lacks, great vision. He doesn't have elite vision, but I don't think he has great vision. So again, he's a name that you'll see on day 2 of the draft, but I'm not the biggest fan. I like him though. He's at 80, so it is what it is. Nyheim Hines from North Carolina State. That guy is going to be really, really good, I think, especially as a pass catcher, as a special teamers, as far as returning punts and kicks. So yes, there's a lot of running backs in this class. It's a deep class, and you brought up, Akram Wadley, who the biggest thing with him is what frame is he going to be at? There's the concerns as far as, is he 190 pounds? Is he 205 pounds? What Wadley are we getting? So it's a little bit of a concern, but I think, his frame could hold up if he's starts off in a limited role, gets in an NFL weight room, and adds a little bit of bulk. And don't sleep on Mark Welton out of Miami, Florida. So.
Yeah, to touch on some of those guys you just mentioned, I'm a big fan of John Kelly as well. I think he has great contact balance. Mm-hmm. He's elusive in the sense that he's able to break tackles because he's trying to run everybody over. Mm-hmm. He has a great stiff arm and whatnot, and he has a ton of experience catching the ball. So I think that he could be a versatile piece for a team. And then another guy that I like late is Jordan Wilkins out of Ole Miss.
Yeah,
he's a pretty slippery guy. He's another guy who's an accomplished pass catcher. I think he has phenomenal vision. And he hits the hole at pace, like exactly how, it's kind of how you would show on a video to youth running back or something like that. Like he's very good. I'm a big fan of him on day 3 too. And he's only been like a 1-year wonder type of player after, this past season in 2017. So there's not that much great tape on him, but I think that he's shown enough on the film that I've seen that he could be a steal on day 3 of the draft as well.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of good running backs in this class, and there's going to be some good ones next year too. Bryce Love, L.J. Scott, just a couple to throw out there, and it's going to be another fun year next year. And I'm not saying we're done talking draft stuff. I mean, we still got a whole week to go. We're going to be doing a mock draft together. We got some stuff that we're going to be doing on Sunday for you guys. More than likely, we might get another podcast in between now and then. But as far as the website goes at cover1.net, what are some things that you might be writing up and given to us before now and the next podcast, or between now and the draft?
Well, now that I'm done with the draft guide, the wide receiver draft guide, which once again, if you want to purchase, go on my pinned tweet on Twitter at BradKelly17. But now that I'm done with that, I'm going to start working on the top 100 big board that I have a lot of players graded. About 40 of them are receivers. Their 40 receivers won't be in the top 100, but I have a ton of players graded. So now it's kind of finishing that up, getting to some of the positions that I have neglected, like interior defensive line. I really haven't watched too much of anyone there. Watching Deron Payne, though, and he makes some flash plays. Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
He just needs to be a little bit more consistent, I think. But anyway, probably top 100 big board, now between now and the draft.
Yeah, no, I look forward to it. It's going to be a good one for sure, especially, seeing your opinion outside of receivers, which I think a lot of people think that's all you know, but I think you know quite a bit about the players in this draft, so I love it. I'll probably have a final mock draft next week for you guys, more than likely, and we can go pick for pick. That'll be fun. So make sure you comment on the article and put your picks in there, and hopefully we can do something live on the draft. I have the access now to YouTube for us. So, Brad, if you want to join me, that'll be great. If not, that's fine too. But either way, we will be doing some live draft stuff on the night of the draft. So make sure you join us on YouTube and all that good stuff. Other than that, I think that's that's all we got for you guys today. We will be back within the next couple of days for sure. And then we'll have maybe a mock draft Monday next Monday if we can. But until then, guys, stay covered with Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast.